Many wonder how we're going to get ourselves out of this fire paradox. What are the best strategies? How do we move forward? And is it possible to live in a fire-prone environment like California? And my answer is yes. It certainly is possible. But it's going to take all hands on deck, and it's going to take an approach that breaks down the silos between our agencies, between our communities, and leads into an arena where there are many public-private partnerships. But together, we recognize that we all have to work through these issues. And you'll see lots of discussion about different dials to turn, different things to adjust when it comes to fire. And my thoughts are, yes, we need to move all the dials, and we have to be moving forward together. So clearly, we've been having issues with alerts and being able to get the right information about red flag warnings out to people fast enough, and creating places where we can respond as communities and where we can use the best available information to make wise decisions about our personal safety and our actions towards evacuation. And we're seeing lots of movement on that arena, and creating more harmonization among alerting systems. That's key. We also have a very effective program around fire response and evacuation and mutual aid, and lots of communities are working on neighborhood scale planning, using signage and different strategies respective to evacuation such that we can move people out of harm's way very quickly. There's a lot more work to do in this arena. For example, have you ever been a part of an evacuation drill respective to fire? My guess is relatively few people in California have had that opportunity. So, the best laid plans are only going to be implemented if we've gone through the practice of doing them. Think about the Great American Shakeout. I mean, when it comes to earthquakes, we've been practicing how to prepare for earthquakes since we were kids in school. But when it comes to wildfire, we really haven't been talking very much about that issue. There's a lot of discussion about wildland management and fuels reduction and ways to manage our forests and our landscapes such that there is less fuel overall. And that's an important part of the equation because, fuel is what is driving these wildfires. But there are a number of strategies that need to be implemented. And, it's always easy to say no to a project. Bigger challenge is how do we say yes? When do we decide that this project is right for this community and that will make a difference? And how do we work together, both amongst the federal land agencies, the state land agencies, the private owners, to be able to implement projects effectively for our communities? So within the wildland management arena, there's a lot of effort in terms of thinking about new tools such as prescribed fire, which is really an old tool, but it's something that we've become less familiar with. Thinking about options for innovation in the wood products sector and ways to use the low-value fuel material that are so commonplace in our forests, but without markets, they don't really move. Thinking about the role that bioenergy plays in this to be able to best utilize some of that low-value material. There's lots of work to be done in this, and it's exciting to see people finally, I think, finding more agreement around the idea that we need to do a better job managing our landscapes. Another component that I think about is really the value of open space and agriculture, and how around communities these important areas serve as buffers as well as safe zones. In some cases can be evacuation zones, and it's just important to have a landscape that's got a mix of conditions and a mix of fuel modifications such that they become places that support our communities and support our ability to coexist with fire. The last several years have also shown us that infrastructure protection is something that we really clearly need to work on. We've experienced utility line failures, and we recognize that our transmission lines and our distribution lines are very vulnerable to wind. And so how do we pay for the upgrades to those systems? But then it's the same notion, how do we pay and how do we support the overall condition of our water infrastructure, our hospitals, our schools, all these other important places, both to be able to be buffers for fire as well as to make sure that we don't cause impact to those places because we need them now more than ever. There's a lot of progress going on in land use planning, building codes, and in zoning. And communities are having, I think, good discussions respective to this issue and trying to think through how to right-size it for their environment and how to integrate our overall vision around fire resilience in a way that is responsive and accommodates our growth potential and our overall land use. The component of the program that I've been talking about has been really focusing in on fire resilient homes. And, we've known for a while that there are new materials, there are new design strategies that can make a difference. But the general public hasn't really gotten that message. And so I think really ripe for conversation right now is how we focus in on building resilience in our homes specifically and in the vegetation right around our homes. This is the critical part of our defensible space and defendable actions that we need to take. And then, of course, post-fire, how do we rebuild our communities? What organizations are there? How do we integrate? How do we work together such that we can build a more resilient future and one that's less vulnerable than it has been in the past? So I talk about these as the facets of fire resiliency and the dials that we need to turn. And really prioritizing and focusing on fire means that we need to turn all these dials together, and we need to figure out how to do this cross-jurisdictional planning and really put forward this idea of building a better future.